Alright, we are talking now about kites, and I want to talk to you about how to draw a kite the proper way, but also I want to talk about the characteristics of a kite because it's different than all the other ones. Now, when you draw a kite, the main characteristic of a kite is that you're going to get perpendicular help me out here, perpendicular diagonals. So, thank you for that. And when you draw the kite, you need to draw the two diagonals first, or else you're not going to get the proper kite. One diagonal is going to be perpendicularly bisected by the other diagonal. And so, whenever I have to draw a kite, what I end up doing is I just draw the horizontal, and I drew that as 4, because 4 is easy to cut in half. What's half of 4? 2. 7, honestly. Alright, but I drew that as 3. There's the center. And now I have to draw a vertical line through there. So I'm going to find a straight line that does this. And because there's no alright, so in order to do this, you get a cross shape where you have a perpendicular bisector here. So if they're perpendicular, what do I know about the diagonals right away? So we can start labeling things as far as the diagonals go. Diagonals. And if you looked at one of the videos, I spelled one word horrifically. So for diagonals, one is bisected by the other. And the other one is not bisected at all. Now, do you remember the perpendicular bisector rule? What's the distance? This bisector is a perpendicular bisector, yes? It is a perpendicular bisector of this diagonal. If I connected, say, this point to this point right here, which I can do, I'll connect this point to that point, and I'll connect this point to this point. What can I say about these two segments right here? They're congruent to each other. So those two segments are congruent to each other. And the reason is the perpendicular bisector theorem, which says, alright, if you have a segment that's perpendicularly bisected by a second segment, what you can do is, from any point on the perpendicular bisector, it's the same distance from the endpoints. So another thing you could have thought of is, since we have right triangles, you have that segment congruent to, or that segment and that segment, do Pythagorean theorem. And since this is all by itself, I'll put a 3 there. And I'll just say 1 squared plus 3 squared is equal to the 2 squared, even though those aren't the numbers. Segment 1 squared plus segment 3 squared is equal to segment 2 squared. Segment 1 squared plus segment 3 squared is equal to segment 2 squared. So the Pythagorean theorem is really what proves that theorem. And to draw the rest of the kite, what we'll do is we'll draw these two segments. Now, what do I know about these two segments down here? they're congruent. So I'm going to put 4 here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it all comes down to the perpendicular bisector theorem. A point on the perpendicular bisector of a segment is equidistant from the endpoints of the segment. And that's saying that if this is the endpoint, I'll call that A, that's B, that's C, and that's D. Oh, thank you. They're all for me. Wonderful. Points A and C are the endpoints of the segment that's perpendicularly bisected. So from D to A, so we can say that DA is congruent to what point, what segment? DC. And that AB is congruent to CB or BC, either one. Now, another cool thing, and let me zoom in a little bit on the shape so we can make it a little bit bigger. Now, since we have two triangles that are congruent to each other, triangle A, and I'll call that M, AMB is congruent to triangle. A corresponds to what point? C. So I get CMB. And triangle AMD is congruent to CMD. That angle BAC is congruent to which angle? BCA. What about angle CAD? This angle right here. Which one's congruent to that? Yeah, this one right over here. ACD. Now, I have a 1 mark and a 2 mark plus a 1 mark and a 2 mark. What can I say about angle BAC or BAD? Angle BAD is congruent to which angle? BCD. And when it comes right down to it, that's pretty much what a kite gives you. So it all has to do with your perpendicular bisectors. It all has to do with right triangles, because you get this triangle and this triangle, they're congruent. This triangle and that triangle, they're congruent. And all sorts of fun stuff happens from there. Capiche? All right. All right, so there is the kite lesson for today. Good to go? Any questions? All right.